Good morning. This is Karen Jones. I want to give kudos to the Melissa Harris Perry show this morning. They did a great job on analyzing and assessing um, the Compton Unified School Systems lawsuit, which is in effect a class action lawsuit. 5 students and 3 teachers filed this lawsuit alleging that the Compton Unified School System failed to address the trauma affected students. And what they're saying is that complex trauma should be classified as a disability. What is complex trauma? In essence, it is PTSD in students, is how I would give it an analogy as PTSD. It's where students are exposed to repeated or multiple traumatic experiences like emotional neglect, emotional abuse, physical abuse. Um, and I took several notes because it was just very good this morning. Invasive, interpersonal, wide range, long term impact on the individual, or even witnessing domestic violence. And how this lawsuit could set precedents on how school systems nationwide address trauma through Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, ADA, and IDEA. It is very crucial that I think we all look into this. As an advocate, it is very important because when we look back at maybe 2 weeks now, the child who was drugged from her desk by Officer Slam in South Carolina, Slam-A-Lot, I think they call him, and everybody was saying it's the parental upbringing and all of that. Well, that child was an orphan, is an orphan. Her mother died. She's in foster care. And what disturbed me most is I didn't see an administrator in that classroom while this officer drugged this student. And I didn't see the teacher try to intervene to help that student. That was excessive force. Whether you like the student or not, that was a bit much. If this child was special needs or evaluated, if she had a behavior problem, or the teacher felt like, or anybody in the school felt like her behavior manifested into her not performing in class or vice versa, was a manifestation determination hearing scheduled, was an evaluation scheduled. Did this child have a crisis plan on hand? Those are questions that I would ask. In addition, when we look at this very interesting case in California, I think Montgomery Public School System and most school systems in the state of Alabama need to be have their alert, red alert up. Not only the school systems, but the State Department of Education. Because when we look at trauma, complex trauma, or PTSD in students and classify and how we will classify it, we look at certain issues. Take, for instance, like the focus monitoring reports that are done by the state, carried out by the state for each school system. And you read the first page of the focus monitoring report, and you can find this on the State Department of Education's website. And it says The continuous improvement process is a blend of compliance monitoring and improving outcomes for students. During phase 1 of the continuous improvement process, a designated number of student files were reviewed to verify compliance with state and federal requirements. Based on phase 1 review, a corrective action plan is developed. The correction action plan is implemented by the local education agency, and compliance is ensured. Look at that word, ensured by the Alabama State Department of Education. The purpose of this report is to provide feedback to the agency and identify findings of non-compliance that must be corrected as soon as possible, and in no case later than 1 year from identification of non-compliance. The report also identifies the corrective action that must be taken by the agency, as well as the documentation that must be submitted to the Alabama State Department of Education. In addition, the report informs the agency of the steps the Alabama State Department of Education will take in order to ensure 100% correction of non-compliance with the statutory requirements. And it may be a lot for those who don't want to hear it, to understand what's going on. But the findings of non-compliance, just say I'm reading Montgomery's. The education agency did not conduct a full and individual initial evaluation before the initial provision of special education and related services to a student with a disability. The immediate correction strategies, the 30-day item said, convene the IEP team and review the eligibility of the students discussed during the on-site visit. Reevaluate students as determined appropriate by a review of eligibility. Improvement strategies, they give a 3 and 6 months training strategy. Documentation of corrective action. Now, all of that is what's in the focus monitoring report by the state. But I would like to know who is checking the checker, who is making sure that the findings of non-compliance and the corrective strategies are being implemented. Because when you look at the focus monitoring report and you look at the ones done in previous years, and you keep getting some of the same findings of non-compliance over and over again, then it's time to look at the State Department's compliance officers. Are they actually making sure that the LEAs, the local education agencies, are fulfilling their improvement strategies and corrective action plans? If they are not, then what happens to the special education directors? Because as we know, in Montgomery County, nothing happens. And it's a continual cycle of findings of non-compliance. Our children all over this state, not just Montgomery County, because when you go to these public hearings and you listen to parents from different counties, parents with special needs children, you listen to some of the same issues that are not being resolved. And so when I heard about the case this morning, I'm like, maybe all of these parents and some who are teachers who are complaining for lack of resources, lack of training, need to have a class action lawsuit filed. And maybe join into the lawsuit that has already been filed in California. Same issues, different state, falls under the same categories of special education, federal regulations. Something to think about. So how should we handle these issues of special education in the state of Alabama? That is a question that should be answered. And it shouldn't be answered with changing the policy to take away a parent's rights. It shouldn't be you change Alabama Administrative Code 298-9 so that the school systems have full immunity or immunity to lawsuits. Shouldn't be that way. We want to work together in the best interest of the child. But if the LEAs are not, the special ed directors are not improving strategies, and please don't give that we don't have enough funding, because there is enough funding. There is enough funding for positive behavior intervention strategies, RTI. But we see that we want to place a group of children in certain programs that the principal favors, but we don't ever see any outcome. You look at IEPs, you don't see any progression charts or regression. You don't know which way the student is going. So I think individuals who are watching this really need to look into the California lawsuit. I'll be reaching out to some individuals to see what we can do on a statewide level to help our special needs children. The complex trauma dilemma. And not only that, the focus monitoring report and the findings of non-compliance. Who is checking the checker? Because as hurtful as it was to see that young lady being drugged in that classroom, drug out and really tortured by that police officer using excessive force, it happens too frequently in Montgomery County and throughout the state of Alabama in many school systems. And because it doesn't get national attention here in Alabama, doesn't mean that it does not exist. Doesn't mean that students have developed PTSD or complex trauma syndrome or behavior issues. So these are some things that we need to be thinking about and considering. What would a class action lawsuit in the state of Alabama look like for students who have complex trauma? Something to think about, because however this judge rules in this case, it's going to not only impact California, but I feel like it will impact the entire nation and make some changes with Section 504, ADA, IDEA, and state and local board policies and regulations. So we, we must break the school to prison pipeline. And if you don't think that all of this is relevant to the school to prison pipeline, then you need to do some more reading and research on it. Thank you.